A judge mocked a black mother in open court, thinking she didn't belong there. But when she revealed who she truly was, the courtroom stopped breathing. The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows of courtroom 3B, painting the air in streaks of gold and dust. The scent of polished wood and old paper lingered, the kind of stillness that carried judgment even before words were spoken. At the defendant's table sat Elena Harris, a black mother whose quiet presence drew more attention than any outburst could. Her posture was straight, her chin slightly lifted, but her hands betrayed her, trembling as they gripped a stack of worn, creased documents. The papers had been folded and unfolded too many times, edges softened by sleepless nights and desperate hope. She wore a plain blouse and faded skirt, the kind that spoke of practicality rather than pride. Yet there was dignity in her simplicity, an unspoken strength that shimmered beneath her nervous calm. Around her, whispers floated like smoke. Reporters scribbled, exchanging murmurs about the single mother who dared to fight the system. A bailiff yawned. Someone chuckled softly. From the bench above, Judge Whitmore reclined in his chair, lips curled into a knowing smirk. His gavel rested lightly in one hand. Unnecessary, he thought, for a case he'd already judged in his mind. The courtroom waited. Elena took a breath. The storm had not yet begun, but everyone could feel it coming. The charge echoed through the courtroom like an insult carved in stone. Obstruction of a legal officer. The words sounded heavy, deliberate, as if meant to crush what little hope Elena Harris still held. Her crime? Daring to question. The officer who had dragged her teenage son away without reason, without mercy. She stood now, alone, before a system built to silence her. No lawyer stood by her side. No one spoke for her. It was just Elena, a mother defending the only thing that still mattered in her world, her son's future. When she began to speak, her voice trembled at first, thin as paper. "Your Honor, I only—" Judge Whitmore cut her off with a lazy wave of his hand. "Ms. Harris, this is a court of law, not a church. Spare us your emotions." A ripple of laughter followed, cruel, careless. Even the bailiff shook his head as though pitying her naivete. Elena said nothing. She simply met the judge's eyes, unblinking. Her silence was neither fear nor surrender. It was focus, the kind that made even the most confident man uneasy. For the first time, Whitmore shifted in his chair. He couldn't explain it. But something about her composure didn't fit the story he'd already written in his mind. When Elena finally spoke again, the laughter had died. The courtroom, moments ago alive with mockery, now hung in silence, heavy and expectant. She adjusted her papers, not to read from them, but to steady her hands. Then she began. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Each word fell with quiet precision, deliberate and sharp, like stones dropped into still water. She cited statutes, quoted rulings, and referenced obscure precedents with uncanny accuracy. It wasn't the tone of a desperate mother pleading for mercy. It was the tone of someone who knew. Judge Whitmore's smirk faded. His pen stopped tapping. He leaned forward slightly, brows furrowed. "Where did you read that?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Elena's lips curved, just barely. "In the same law library your interns use, Your Honor." A ripple of surprise moved through the courtroom. A few reporters exchanged glances. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. At the back of the room, Elena's son sat frozen, his eyes wide with wonder. For the first time in weeks, pride replaced fear on his face. There was something in his mother's voice, quiet steel beneath gentleness. And the crowd began to realize this woman wasn't as helpless as she seemed. The prosecutor strode confidently to the front, his shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. "Your Honor," he announced, "the body cam footage speaks for itself." The lights dimmed slightly as the video flickered onto the screen. The courtroom watched as Elena appeared, frantic, desperate, her voice breaking as she pleaded for her son's release. Two officers stood before her, stone-faced, refusing to meet her eyes. One shoved her back lightly. The other reached for his cuffs. The prosecutor folded his arms, satisfied. "This," he said, "is what obstruction looks like." Elena's face remained unreadable. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing on the screen. "Your Honor, may I?" she asked softly. The judge sighed, annoyed, but waved a hand. "Pause it at minute 342, she said. "Now, play it again." Slowly, the room obeyed. The video moved frame by frame. Then she pointed. "Stop, look. Between 342 and 345, the timestamp jumps. 3 seconds. Gone." Judge Whitmore rolled his eyes. "Mrs. Harris," but the technician's voice cut in, uneasy. "She's right, Your Honor. There's a gap." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Heads turned. The smug confidence on the prosecutor's face faltered. And for the first time that afternoon, the balance in the room began to shift. Elena rose from her chair with quiet authority, the tremor that once haunted her voice now gone. "Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine the officer," she said. The judge hesitated, but curiosity, or perhaps arrogance, made him nod. The officer took the stand, straight-backed, confident. But Elena's calmness was different now, sharp, deliberate. Each question she asked was precise, a thread pulling apart his story piece by piece. "Officer, you stated you arrived at 2:10 p.m., correct?" "Yes." "Yet your report lists 2:25, which is it?" A flicker of doubt crossed his face. She pressed further. His answers began to stumble. Papers shuffled. The prosecutor's jaw tightened. The judge tried to interject. "Ms. Harris, we're not here to—" But the words fell flat. The audience was transfixed, their silence almost reverent. Then Elena paused. Her eyes met the judge's, steady and clear. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady. "Before I became a mother fighting for my child, I was an attorney in this very courthouse." Gasps broke the silence. The judge froze mid-breath. "I left," she continued softly, "when this system failed my husband. I promised I'd never return, until today." And in that moment, power shifted, irrevocably. For a heartbeat, the courtroom stood frozen, air thick with disbelief. Elena let the silence linger, then reached into her folder with deliberate calm. The papers she withdrew were crisp, clean, official, the contrast to the worn pages she had carried before. She stepped forward, her heels echoing softly on the marble floor. "Your Honor," she said, voice unwavering, "I have one final document to present." The judge, still pale from her last revelation, adjusted his glasses impatiently. "And what might that be, Ms. Harris?" Elena's gaze did not waver. "A letter from the State Bar Association." She handed it to the bailiff, who hesitated before passing it to the bench. "It reinstates my attorney's license," she continued, her tone calm but electric. "Effective, this morning." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, growing louder with each passing second. Reporters scrambled for their pens. The prosecutor blinked, speechless. Judge Whitmore's smirk, the one that had hovered on his face since the hearing began, was gone. His fingers tightened around the paper. Elena turned, facing the crowd. No longer the trembling mother accused of defiance. She now stood as her son's defender, his advocate, his shield. In that instant, the entire courtroom shifted. And for once, justice bowed its head. The courtroom had never been so still. The echoes of gasps and whispers faded until only Elena's voice remained, steady, clear, and carrying the weight of every mother who had ever been silenced. She stood tall, facing the bench, her chin lifted just slightly, the letter from the bar still trembling in the judge's hand. "You mocked me for being a mother," she said softly, her words slicing through the silence. "But it's because I am a mother that I fight harder than anyone in this courtroom." Her voice did not tremble. It didn't need to. The conviction behind it filled the room more powerfully than any shout could. For a long moment, no one moved. Even Judge Whitmore, once so smug and certain, found himself unable to meet her gaze. His gavel, which had once felt like a symbol of control, now seemed absurdly small in his hand. Finally, he cleared his throat and muttered almost reluctantly, Case dismissed. The words hung in the air like a benediction. Elena turned toward her son, tears shimmering in her eyes. He ran to her, arms wrapping tight around her waist. The golden afternoon light poured through the tall windows, washing over them both. Not just warm, but triumphant. Justice, at last, had a mother's face. Never underestimate a woman who fights for her family. The quiet ones often carry the loudest truth.